So the topic of AI obviously is big, right? And very often when you talk to people, you can we're divided in two camps. And one is that the glass is over the half full mark or the glass is half empty. I am on the glass is half full. I think AI has got a lot of offerings for the future. I think it'll be a tool that will help us tremendously.
Welcome to Data and AI Mastery, the podcast where we bring you cutting-edge insights, practical advice, and inspiring stories from the leaders shaping the future of data and AI across the globe. I'm your host, Raoul Gabriel-Dehmer, founder of Cambridge Spark, the leader in transformational data and AI upskilling, career development, and progression. In each episode, I will be diving into real-world case studies of companies harnessing the power of AI to drive innovation, reduce cost, and create new business opportunities. So whether you are an aspiring data scientist, AI engineer, or seasoned executive, this show is designed to give you the tools and knowledge to stay ahead in a world where data is transforming every aspect of business. Stay ahead, stay inspired, stay masterful. Welcome to Data and AI Mastery. Hey Manfred, so good to see you. How are you?
I'm doing great, Raoul. How are you?
I'm doing brilliant, calling from London. Where are you calling from today?
Brussels. So it's a very typical day in Brussels. It is gray on gray and not particularly warm.
I was born in Brussels actually, so that resonates a lot, Manfred. So it's a huge privilege to have you on the podcast today. I'm so excited about a conversation. Maybe to demystify it a little bit for the audience, because Manfred, your position is highly prestigious. Can you help demystify what is a normal double quote, right? I'm not sure there's a normal day for you, but what does a day looks like, in your life for the audience?
So every day is very different, but let me just broadly talk about the mandate that I have. So I have we call it a coin that has two sides. So I'm standing on two legs, and one leg is the more classic IT leg of making sure that we do things in the NATO enterprise in the most harmonized fashion. So the NATO enterprise is the inner part of NATO that consists of the military, civilian entities, different research and educational institutions that NATO has for training and for development of the warfighter and of other people. So there is a group of organizations inside of this NATO enterprise, and that is surrounded by the allies. And so allies are the 32, obviously. And my focus is it's inwards, towards the NATO enterprise. So the systems that we need to run in the NATO enterprise that then connect with allied nations, that is my focus. And so there I look after coherence. And coherence is expressed in enterprise architecture, for example, that we do the same things only once and that we do not have duplicate solutions running around. So we are a very federated environment. We're organically grown, and I'm the first CIO of NATO. So it's not a surprise that there's a lot of work in front of us to make sure that the systems landscape really is harmonized. So it has an enterprise architecture perspective to it. It also has a portfolio management perspective to it. So that we execute projects and programs in a fashion where it makes sense for the entire conglomerate of organizations within the NATO enterprise. And then there's also things like service level delivery, that we have harmonized service levels across all of the parts of the enterprise, and technology choices that make sense that we use really across. So this whole idea of across is really, really important and embodies this first part of my mandate, which is IT coherence. And then the second leg that I stand on is IT security for the enterprise. So I am what we call at NATO a single point of authority for cybersecurity. So we do have different organizations that look after cybersecurity. We've got a security operations center. We've got a cybersecurity center. We've got threat intelligence that comes in through civilian channels, but also through the military. So there's various organizations that play in this cyber domain. And we are, for the NATO enterprise, one organization that is putting the glue around that. So that's what I mean with single point of authority for cybersecurity. If there was to be a major incident, we're the ones who manage that incident. We also look at risk in systems transversely across the NATO enterprise. And so it's those two legs that I have. One is IT coherence, and the other one is cybersecurity.
So, be great to hear, maybe on broad level, before we go into use case, Manfred. As the CIO, how do you think about AI in terms of, both from maybe a threat point of view, actually giving kind of like the cybersecurity angle, but also from a adoption within the enterprise? How do you approach the topic?
So the topic of AI obviously is big, right? And very often when you talk to people, we're divided in two camps. And one is that the glass is over the half full mark, or the glass is half empty. And I am on the glass is half full. I think AI has got a lot of offerings for the future. I think it'll be a tool that will help us tremendously. I think it is a natural progression from where it's kind of comparable with the internet, right? When that came, and then suddenly, if you wanted to know something, you could, instead of finding the almanac in on your bookshelf, or somehow going to a library and reading up on it. I mean, the fact that you have instant access to all the information that's out there is revolutionary. And so I think this is now, it's the next level. It's now we can take things that that we had to still look up online, but in a cumbersome fashion. AI is putting that on steroids, and it's taking it to the next level. And so I'm very excited about it. I think it has a lot of potential in it. We just need to decide a little bit more as to in which direction we want to take it, and we need to manage the risks that come with it. And I'm sure you've got some questions about that. Is that how do we manage risk with AI, and how are we using it in an ethical, in a legal, in a responsible way?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So maybe can you help me understand, I guess, the process around, AI is here. We need to test it out to see, what are use cases internally that might benefit. I'd love to hear from you how you kind of like approach that sort of first surface level use case identification, and then within the remit of the governance, especially as you've mentioned, it's absolutely critical at NATO. What does that look like? So walk us through the process of, did you all were in a room and, one day, the conversation was, all right, AI, we've got to tackle it. What do we all think? Or did you have priorities in mind and then you channel your team towards it? Or maybe it comes from, people on the ground sitting at this desk that have ideas and they say, hey, AI could be useful for my role. Where do you sit on that spectrum?
So it's kind of what you said in the beginning. It's so we got specialists into a room and we did a brainstorming session. And specialists, really not technical specialists, but really people who are working in particular areas where AI would be helpful. And so I think AI, as we have it today, is helpful in areas where you have routine work that would benefit from automation. Automation more than just kind of standard IT, or what punch cards did in the 60s. I mean, automation at a different level, of a higher level of sophistication in the processes that are running over the data. And so we got people from various parts of the business into a room, and then we brainstormed and we said, giving these guidelines, where would it make sense to focus our efforts on. And you would have people bring forward cases like, we are running the translations, for example, at NATO. And translation for us is a big deal because we have two official languages, and it's English and French. And every official written document needs to be in both languages. All of the formal committee meetings that we have, and so there's many committees at NATO that deal with either resources, finances, digital policy, cyber defense policy. We have, many committees that go all the way up to the North Atlantic Council, the NAC. All of the meetings are happening in English and French. So there are interpreters in the booths that take what's said in English and translate it into French and vice versa. So we do that. So translation is a big business. And that's where you could say that could be automated to some degree. Now, it's not as easy as automating that like accounting, because there is a learning in the nuances of language and in things that might not be entirely clear, or especially when it comes to spoken language, um, imperfections or accents, or I lived for a long time in Texas, so I have adopted a little bit of a Texas accent, which I hope people would not take that as an imperfection, but it's
It's a
kind of that.
beautiful accent, Manfred.
But it is these things, and that's really where the learning factor and the training factor in AI comes in translation. We've had people from the Office of the Financial Controller come and say, we do a lot of reconciliation between data. Now, it's not a mindless task of just essentially manually comparing things, but it's like you would be looking at reports that were generated, and you try to find patterns in case they do not tie. That's another great use case area for AI. There is a number of use cases on the military side as well. And so we looked at very practical things that we could do in AI. So this is not, also when I say military, I mean, we're not looking at, I don't know, killer robots or kind of advanced, or automated weapon systems. I mean, that is not, that is part that the military needs to think about, right? Because our adversaries are thinking about the same thing. But we really tried by bringing people together to get very tangible, practical things that we could work on that are a real priority for people at the current time. Now, we had a good list, and then the other thing that we looked at is, where do we have data? Because you could have a fantastic idea about doing something in AI, but if you don't have the right data underneath, it's not really going to get you very far. And there's an even more practical aspect that bleeds into that, and that is, where do you have data available, and then where do you put an AI engine on top of it? And so based on that, we came up with a number of use cases that we want to pursue, kind of play with, and look at the application of AI in a controlled environment. We also have a a review board that was being put together, where we look at the ethical usage of data and of AI. And so there's always a guardrail around in whatever we do on making sure that this is used for the purpose that is an intentional, benevolent purpose, really, for AI, based on the guidelines that we give to the team. But so in summary, it was a very practical way that we took. What could make the biggest impact right now, and where do we have data to support that impact?
I guess it'd be great to hear the evaluation process. So it sounds like one criteria was, do we have access to the data, or how difficult will it be to make the data happen? So kind of like there's kind of a natural prioritization framework here, access to data. Let's focus on that first. But what came after? I guess things like implementation efforts, ROI. How did you think about ROI in this context? And I imagine it must be quite unique at NATO.
So what we did next was we did a hackathon.
Oh, cool.
We did a hackathon last year, and we had selected a bunch of use cases out of all of the ones with that criteria of what is practical, where do we have data, what makes sense. And then we took completely normal people and unleash them on creating prompts and working with a couple of technology partners that we brought in on developing the model in the background. And that was it was exciting. So people in the beginning were nervous about the fact that I don't really know anything about AI. I'm not even a programmer, certainly, or a technical person. So those were real users, real people that thought about, and that with the technical guidance and the instruction of people who know the technical side of the house, work together on for each team, and it was divided in teams for these different use cases that we had. I think those were 7 use cases, for each team to put a solution together. And then in the end, there was a competition, and then one team won best prize, right? But it was remarkable to see that it was a 2-day event, if I'm not mistaken, and a lot of teams worked the night through from day 1 to day 2, and we set it up as a game, and it really was very helpful, and a great success. Just looking through the evaluations of people who were in those sessions, I was very, very pleased that we did that, and we want to do that again this year in the summer, most likely. And so that's one thing of how we progress this thing. The other question was about ROI. And so, I said earlier that we don't measure ROI really in the sense how a private company or a company in the private industry would measure ROI and look at net present value and internal rate of return and all of these
And all the fun formulas.
metrics. Yeah, all of these metrics that were so very, very important in my previous life. We don't we we, we look at efficiency, we look at cost. We certainly do that, but we do not have an ROI, because we just how we look um, at supporting security in the world is different, right? We're just look at it differently. But what we are looking at is, where do we have an anticipation of productivity and an efficiency uplift? And that is really a more qualitative assessment rather than hard numbers in an ROI calculation. And then that is where we want to focus our effort and our money on.
Great, great. I'd love to maybe unpack the hackathon engagement, because it's a really cool, innovative way to foster wider workforce engagement in the topic, drive innovation. It helps with the culture, having like skin in the game of the evolution of the organization. And at Cambridge Spark, I've heard many other clients running those hackathons for the exact that purpose. Can you shed a bit of light around, when would you recommend running a hackathon? Other senior leaders out there that are thinking about the topic of AI innovation, when would you recommend, it's worth it to like organize a hackathon, and, when it's more of a fun activity? Like, how do you distinguish between the two?
I think today would be a good day to do a hackathon, for anyone. I think that if you've not done that, of really in a kind of in a playful way getting parts of the organization involved in such an activity, who will in turn become change agents and then go out and spread the message further. I could recommend this in any stage, whether you have just started to think about AI a little bit, or whether you're well on the AI journey that few people are on. A few people, I would say, are well on the journey. But I would think it's a good idea at any time. And so when we did the first one this past summer, it was a really good way of bringing people together. We also had a senior leadership session as part of that hackathon. So we asked senior leaders to come in, and we had a presentation by the technology providers that we worked with, and by a couple of other people, and to at the same time garner the management buy-in from a higher level, and create change agents and a lot of excitement on the ground. So it really served these two purposes. And I would recommend this as a good activity at any time.
Absolutely. Fantastic. And Manfred, before we move on to maybe kind of like a quick fire round of question, just really high level, right? Like what excites you, at the moment in terms of like new trends, and maybe on the flip side, what do you find concerning? Obviously, just this week, a lot has happened in the AI space, right? So tell us a bit more what excites you or what concerns you, perhaps.
Hmm. So what excites me is that it's a never-ending field of expansion, right? It's like we've now talked for the past 30 or 45 minutes or so about AI. That is a very exciting topic. And I think the developments that we see, because again, I think the internet was a game changer. I think AI is a second big step, exponential step in being a game changer. And that is very exciting. Now, that does not relieve us from persistently worrying about and looking after how do we best use this thing for in earlier said in a benevolent way. So we really need to look at how do we use it, and we see a lot of non-benevolent uses also of AI. Well, not a lot, but they're growing. When we look at cybersecurity, right? When we look at the red picture at what adversaries are doing, and so AI can be used for good and for bad, and so we should do what we can to support the good use of AI, and that is very, very exciting. Now, what I am concerned about is that we don't do that all the time, particularly for AI and for a responsible use of data. I am concerned about bias that can sneak into your data. I'm concerned about the pure cybersecurity aspects of protecting LLMs, of protecting models. I think if you've got the wrong person reaching into the model, it could have really bad outcomes, right? Because you no longer trust something that you may have gotten used to trusting. I'm also a bit concerned about um, the freshness of ideas and of creativity, because if you use too much AI and you just reuse existing content, it's there is a staleness that I am concerned about. And so AI has a lot of use cases. If you listen to music, there's AI uses of music, and I don't really think we would have had a Bob Dylan or Beatles or any of the big game-changing musicians and songwriters if that was done through AI. So I'm a bit worried about the freshness of content. We should not have AI get us into a situation where we've got a pond that no longer has fresh water uh, flowing into the pond, and for the content to get stale. So that's another angle aside from the security part and the ethical use. It is the creative use of the entire space of content that could be negatively influenced through AI.
That's fascinating answer, and that resonates a lot. I mean, especially on the creativity, content, and so on. It's true that sometimes you go on LinkedIn, you read articles like it all sounds kind of like the same, right? It must be the same LLM that's kind of like spitting out the same words. So maybe we're risky at losing a unique tone of voice and unique creativity. So that's a really interesting point. So maybe quick fire round of question, Manfred. So essentially, I'll ask you a question and just short answer what comes to mind. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So how do you stay up to date as a leader and, for your CIO kind of like colleagues?
By talking to a lot of people and by being on podcasts and going to industry events, reading, all of the classic things. Most important part is talking to other people.
Any contrarian view you have in the industry? Like some thinking that you challenge?
I would say that we have had the wrong expectations of technology. And I work in technology. I'm a biggest fan of it. But the thing that technology does is to allow you to spend more time on work or or on other things, right? So that would be my contrarian view. It's I there is a bit of
I love
a
it.
false prophecy in the whole technology use, and technology has not made us save time. It has made us more efficient and productive, but we have immediately reinvested that time.
Got it. That's such a great contrarian view. So instead of freeing up time, it's basically increase our throughput. So we end up doing more anyway.
Yes.
Interesting. Interesting. So maybe a couple of more personal questions. So what's your favorite programming language?
Oh my God. Now you really make me out myself as far as the, so I programmed in RPG 3, which is was an IBM mid-range system, the IBM System 38 that came out like in, I would say, the 1970s, 80s. And I programmed in RPG 3 and in COBOL. And
All
so
right.
um my favorite programming language is COBOL because I really do like it, and it's one of the two that I know. So I've only done the programming in the beginning, and then I decided that that was not the right work for me because I have a hard time really sitting still and not talking to people all the time and really focusing intensely on this program. So the career in programming was short-lived, and so I didn't have a lot of exposure to programming languages that are now, exciting and, C and C++, and I've never really stuck my nose into any of that, but it's COBOL.
COBOL. Great. I mean, unexpected answer, but I'll take it. I'll take it. Two more questions. So favorite subject at school?
Ah, favorite subject at school, history. History, because it was not math. That was one part of it, and it was only later in life that I embraced math and the more quantitative parts of decision making. And so that was during my MBA, and then I did a master in business and management research that had a lot of quantitative analysis with it. But when I was in school at a younger age, math was not my subject, but history was. And the thing that had fascinated me, and I forgot now who said it, but the only thing new in this world is the history that we can't remember anymore. And that has kind of stuck with me because then if you look at history and if you learn it, you're already a leg up.
Fascinating. I mean, what's really cool is it doesn't matter what subject you like in school, you can have a really successful career in technology. 'Cause sometimes there's a bit of préjugé, I guess, in French that, you need to do maths and so on. So that's great. And my final question, and I expect a really good answer here is
No pressure.
what's your favorite music genre?
So I do like opera a lot. That is Opera is fantastic. I do like rap. And I have gotten into a new kind of genre that I really enjoy quite a bit. I think it's kind of a further development of funk in a kind of slower, more modern way. And so you'll find anything and everything on their playlist.
Great. Well, I can't wait to have a sneak peek of that place. That sounds like an incredible mix. Manfred, thank you so much for our conversation today. It's been absolutely fascinating. So many rich takeaways. And thank you.
Well, Raoul, thank you so much. Great conversation.
What a fascinating conversation with Manfred. Such a friendly and charismatic person. What really struck me is, every CIO right now, you are having to think about AI. How do you adopt it? What are use cases? What's the definition of ROI? As Manfred explained, it's different if you are in the public domain, the private domain, and also it's different depending on the complexity of the organization. But one thing that was common ground is you will need to bring the people along the journey. And you can do this through various ways. You can run a very holistic L&D effort. Like Manfred said, every role in the organization needs to be upskilled, whether it's people on the day-to-day role, whether it's the leadership team, or whether it's the innovators that, are going to have to do the technical work and maybe customize those LLM and new tools to adopt it in the work. But also what's also interesting here to hear is that clearly AI, will impact some roles and automate some of the work. So it raised the question of how can we support those individuals to elevate their responsibility and use AI to supercharge their role. So in a way, elevating them to be more subject matter experts. And, again, this goes to upskilling and also reskilling of the workforce to succeed in, an environment that is moving so fast, right? Every day, every month, the AI space is evolving so rapidly. So that was really interesting insight. Now, what I thought was also interesting is how do you tackle the topic of change management? How do you get people excited about the technology and incentivize them to use it in the role? And a hackathon is clearly a fun way to do it, but there's more to it that appears on the surface, because if you organize it well, and Manfred said that, they did it across 2 days, you can really bring the workforce together on a bottom-up approach, but also on a top-down. So it's a great opportunity to get people excited about technology and feel how it could be useful for their day-to-day. And then they become change agents. So that's one important component. The second was the leadership team. You don't want them to feel anxious and being a blocker to change. So they also have to be brought in that journey. And the hackathon is a great opportunity to do so, to be creative, figure out use case, demonstrate ROI, demonstrate value, and make an event out of it with prizes and awards and celebration. And more organizations should think about running, well-organized hackathons in order to drive that innovation mindset and change management. So super helpful experience. Thank you, everybody. Been a real pleasure to see you, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Data and AI Mastery. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Data and AI Mastery. If you found value in today's discussion, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an insight from the leaders driving the future of data and AI. And if you're a data and AI leader looking to upskill your workforce with the fundamental data and AI skills to transform your business, Cambridge Spark is here to guide you every step of the way. Be sure to reach out to us on LinkedIn or on our website, cambridgespark.com. Until then, be sure to keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible with data, and remember, mastery comes with continued learning and action. Until next time, stay ahead, stay inspired, and stay masterful.